This is your primary succession video notes. You're going to use the Photable that we made last week that we glued in on Monday into your ISN. So if you'll please get to that page. Your first three tabs across the top, you need to label Pioneer Stages. The heading for this is Primary Succession. The fourth tab, please label that Intermediate Stage. And the last tab, label that Mature Community. On the bottom, sorry for the blurriness of this picture, but you're starting out with bare rock, and then on the rocks you have lichens and mosses that have attached. Then your next section, you've got small annual plants starting to grow. You still have lots of rock visible. Perennial herbs and grasses, your next section. Grasses, shrubs, shade-intolerant trees are starting to grow. And then for your last tab, you have shade-tolerant trees. This is what it looks like in the textbook. Here's your lichens and your mosses section, your bare rock. You've got some grasses starting to grow, annual plants. Then you have the perennial herbs and grasses that produce seeds and also hibernate and come back from the roots that are in the soil the next season. Intermediate stages will be grasses, shrubs, shade-intolerant trees. And then you get your shade-tolerant trees. These are the trees that can live under the larger trees. Alright, as I go through the notes, you're going to have to pause the video to copy the information in the real estate of the tabs. I will just continue on. Alright, now for your first tab, lift your lichens and mosses tab. And in the real estate, you want to list these 3 points. First, primary succession starts with rock. There's no dirt available. As the lichens and mosses secrete enzymes and chemicals to break the rocks down, they make smaller rocks, and then as they die, they're adding organic material to the newly formed soil. The organic materials they're adding would be carbon. They're also adding nutrients that are needed for plant growth, the nitrogen and the phosphorus. So these lichens and mosses are called pioneer species. Alright, moving to the next tab. Once you have some dirt growing, you've got nitrogen and phosphorus in the soil, some carbon. That's enough to start supporting some small annual plants. And you'll find that you have rocks still visible. You've got the grasses that are beginning to grow. They're going to eventually die, and they continue to add organic material to the soil. The plants and grasses in this stage of the ecosystem, they only live for one growing season, and then they die. Okay, on your third tab, perennial herbs and grasses. Perennials live for more than one growing season. So these are herbs and grasses that are producing seeds that get into the soil, and the next season they will begin to grow new plants, or the root system, the roots that are in the soil, allow plants to hibernate and then grow from the soil, from the roots that are in the soil. So the grasses and herbs come back the next season from seeds that are in the soil or roots that are in the soil. Okay, I don't know why that popped up. Let's get back to our video. Alright, so insects now have food. They have a place to live. So you start having your herbivores starting to move in, your primary consumers. You've got your producers already there. Now there's enough life there, producers there, to support your primary consumers. Okay, on the next tab, you've got shade intolerant trees and shrubs. Trees and shrubs that can survive in direct sunlight are called shade intolerant trees and shrubs. They are not able to live in the shade. They can't tolerate the shade, so that's why they're called intolerant, shade intolerant. Now you've got bigger plants moving in the form of these trees and shrubs. You've got places for birds to live. You've got places for squirrels and other animals that are going to seek their shelter or food source from these trees and shrubs. So now you've got larger animals coming into the ecosystem. So now you're getting your secondary, possibly even your tertiary consumers moving into this ecosystem. For your last tab, shade tolerant trees. These are trees that grow, but they can't survive in direct sunlight. So they like the shade. So they're going to grow underneath the canopies of the shade intolerant trees. So they're going to be growing in the shadows lower than the shade intolerant trees. Now, once you reach this mature community, if the community is not changing, the number of species are staying the same, you've reached what's called a climax community, which is a non-changing mature community. This rarely occurs because you have new species coming in, you have old species dying out, and the numbers within the population are always changing. So this is all the notes that are going in the real estate of your foldable. Now we're going to talk about secondary succession. So you've started with rock, you've got a new ecosystem that's beginning, you've got to your mature community, and now you've had some pollution, forest fire, floods, catastrophic weather events, hurricanes, typhoons. You have a new road being built, new subdivisions coming in, new businesses being built. These are all causes that cause that mature community to change. And then that's where secondary succession comes in. And the main difference between primary succession and secondary succession is that secondary succession begins with dirt, and in the dirt there are seeds, there are roots of plants. So you've got your perennial plants that are going to begin growing fast in this community. So secondary succession is orderly, predictable change that occurs after a community of organisms has been removed. The stages pick up usually with the perennial plants. Secondary succession occurs faster than primary succession because the dirt, seeds, and roots are already present. And again, here are a list of a few of the main causes of secondary succession. What caused that mature community to change so that we're having to go back to maybe the perennial plants or going back to the shade intolerant trees. Now, the last thing that I would like you to do is to draw this little Venn diagram, and on the left side for primary succession, I want you to write down things that are only I can't walk. It's 11 o'clock at night. Okay, that are just characteristics of primary succession. On the right side, the characteristics that are just set for secondary succession. And what do both of these successions have in common? You need to go back in your textbook and read in chapter 14 about succession, and they list both primary and secondary in your textbook. Plus look back at your notes and you'll be able to answer this. I will be checking this